So I've thought about something in my life lately. I know, shocker. And I think it's that the worst things in my life isn't actually like the thing itself. It's like the anticipation before it happens. And I have three things that I think really describe this idea well that happened to me last week. I was waiting for a job interview. I went to Disney World and I was standing in line for like a roller coaster that I'd never been on. I'm not like the biggest roller coaster guy. They're usually really fun and I like them, but I get like anxious before. And like knowing you got to have a tough conversation with somebody, it was a work thing that, you weren't sure if it was going to go well or not. And I don't know, that moment where nothing's really happening yet, but your brain's just like absolutely spinning just gets me, man. And what's funny is once the thing like actually starts, it's usually fine. Like it's not amazing, or like fun, but it's like manageable. So I kind of wanted to talk about why am I anxiety maxing for 6 hours for something that takes 15 minutes. I think I'll start off with, this whole like roller coaster thing. I went to Disney this past weekend. My boy from college came out and he had a buddy that works there. And so we were like kind of skipping all the lines and stuff. So I think that kind of helped when, I'm not waiting in line for 45 minutes tripping about the ride and whatever. Like, when you're just standing in line and you can just see the ride and you see the drop and the people screaming and I don't know, man, it just gets me. And we went on that roller coaster Everest. I think it's in the Animal Kingdom. And they said that one's could be pretty intense and I didn't really know what to expect, like I'd seen some of them YouTube videos where it like goes backwards and stuff. I knew that there wasn't like any loops, so I think there was like maybe one or two big drops, but I was tripping, man. I was pretty nervous. Like when we first got to the park and they're like, yeah, that's like one of the first rides we're gonna do, or like it was closed, thank God. I was sweating bullets, but they opened it back up, so it ended up being like the fourth ride that we did. And I was like, yeah, we need like a little warm up before this, guys. I'm a little scared. I won't even lie. And my friends are just fucking messing with me and whatever. And as I totally get it, and as we're getting in line, I just heart rate starts going up. Like hands are kind of sweaty. You're like kind of considering like, what am I really doing? Like I'm a grown ass person and I'm tweaking, and I see some little kid getting in the ride. Like it's totally fine. And I don't know, man. It's just like I get this anticipation anxiety. But then I get on the actual ride and it's like, holy shit, this is pretty insane. Like it was pretty crazy going like backwards in the dark. Like that ride is definitely pretty intense for sure, but it was fun. You know what I mean? Like it was scary for like 10 seconds, but then it was over. And I was like, that wasn't really that bad. And now I'm like kind of annoyed at myself as I'm like getting off the ride because I was like, I just spent like all this time stressing about this ride for like 10 seconds of actual like feeling scared. It's kind of ridiculous. But then this exact same kind of feeling hit me when I actually got a job interview for a new position. So I had gone to Disney on the weekend and then I got an email on Monday about, hey, let's like interview for this position. I was like, oh, no way, they're actually getting back to me. And I think it hits harder for me. Like if it's a job that I'm kind of like, whatever, like I'll go check it out. But if it's a job that I actually want, like the one I had recently that I actually was really excited about this position, I start like cooking myself. You know what I mean? I sit there thinking like, what if they ask something I don't know? What if I freeze up? Or what if I say something dumb? And I just start stressing like every possible scenario of like what could happen. I start rehearsing the whole interview in my brain, and my brain just like runs simulations. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like you're in the shower doing mock interviews with yourself and you're pacing in your room like a TED Talk speaker getting ready, and I just get like this, oh my God, I get so anxious about it. So it's kind of really at the forefront of my mind. I can feel the cortisol spiking in me. But then when I like actually log on to the interview and they're just like normal people and they're just kind of like, hey, how's it going? And suddenly it's just like a guy or a girl and it's just some normal person asking questions. You kind of start feeling silly because you just are like, I just spent 24 hours stress coding this moment like it was some big ass boss fight or defined my future. But it ended up being totally fine and it went really well and I'm having more interviews. So, it's never easy, but it's almost never as bad as the version your brain created. But this next one might be the worst. I'm not going to get too into this. It's nothing like super crazy. It's just best not to put it out on YouTube. But it's just kind of this idea of tough conversations, when it's like you're gonna have a conversation with somebody and you don't really know which way it might go. And you might have to talk to somebody about something awkward, maybe you mess something up at work, maybe you have to explain something that didn't go well, but instead of just handling it, your brain goes into full cinematic mode and starts doing the same thing. It's writing scripts, it's running simulations. What if they're mad? What if this turns into a whole bigger issue? Did I say the wrong thing and make it worse? Maybe I should have just not talked to them about it. And now you're not just like having a conversation with them, you're like preparing for a full emotional boss battle with yourself. You'll like try and delay it, think about it all day, replay every possible scenario. And then you finally suck it up and you go have the conversation. You're already exhausted, emotionally fried. But then most of the time it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're good. We talk it out. We communicate. We're people. And then afterwards, you're just kind of like, why was I mentally suffering over this for like 6 hours? Similar thing to the job interview. But I kind of want to talk about, why does our brain do this? Like, why is my brain doing this? So, like, what's actually going on here? And I think it really comes down to your brain treats uncertainty like danger. If something hasn't happened yet, your brain doesn't just chill. It'll just start running simulations, like what's going to happen, what could go wrong, how do we prepare for this? But here's the problem. It doesn't just give you one outcome. It gives you the worst outcome, and then maybe the second slightly worse outcome, and then a slightly worse version of that. It's like your brain is running the worst case scenario tournament, It's the March Madness bracket of everything that could fucking go wrong. Like your brain would rather assume something bad is coming than admit it has no idea what's about to happen. And the crazy part is your brain thinks it's helping. This is your brain's version of preparation. Like, let me just make you miserable in advance so you're ready type shit, But moving on, like another question I kind of had to ask myself as I was thinking about this was, why does waiting feel so much worse than the actual thing? Like what's the reason the anticipation feels worse? And it's usually because it has advantages reality doesn't. Usually it's ambiguous and it has an unlimited time limit. Like the actual thing is short itself, but the wait for it could be all day, could be a week, could be 2 hours, 45 minutes. The event has a timeline and a time limit. Your overthinking really doesn't until the event happens. And then it leads into number 2, which is unlimited imagination. In real life, one thing happens, but in your head, everything happens, and somehow it's always the worst version in your head. But reality isn't like that. Reality has one outcome and it plays out, and in your head, 12 disasters happen before lunchtime. Moving on to the third one is no resolution, and I think this is the real killer. When you're doing the thing, you're responding, you're focused, it's real, like you're fully engaged with it. But when you're waiting, you can't do anything. You're just sitting there trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist yet. You're stuck preparing for something that hasn't even decided what it is yet. And I think that's what really clicked for me as I'm reflecting on all this is the anxiety isn't the situation, it's the version your brain made up. It's not the ride, not the interview or that tough conversation. It's the imagined version of it that you've been rehearsing for hours. And that version's always worse. All right, so that's all great, Daryl. We know the why, but how do you actually deal with it? I don't think you can fully get rid of this, but you can stop making it worse. And you got to stop giving your brain unlimited prep time. And that's something that I'm trying to work on is, the longer you wait, the more insane your thoughts are going to get. So instead of letting it sit in your head all day, you got to shorten the gap. Say the thing sooner, do the thing sooner. Like, don't wait, don't procrastinate, and your brain won't write the script for it anymore. Another thing is focusing on the first step. because your brain jumps straight to, what if I mess up everything? Instead, think, just start, just take the first step, answer the first question in the interview, just get on the ride and put the friggin' lap bar down, just say the first sentence. You don't need to handle the whole situation in the first 10 seconds of it. You just take one step at a time. And then remember the pattern, remember that this is kind of something that happens. Every time you stress before something happens, it turns out to be pretty manageable. Not always easy, just not as catastrophic as your brain's making it seem. So the worst version of the situation exists almost entirely in your head. 99% of the time, be aware of the pattern, basically. Some closing thoughts here, though. I think, something really weird about all this as I'm sitting here making this video and thinking about it is how often I was suffering through things twice. And I'm sure a lot of other people do this as well. Like, you suffer once in your head and then once in real life. And most of the time, the one in your head is way, way worse. So yeah, the anxiety doesn't really go away. You're still going to feel it. But once you realize what your brain's doing, it feels less like something's actually wrong and more like, oh, my brain's just kind of doing its thing again, I don't know, at least that's how I'm moving about it right now. But the thing you're waiting for is almost never as bad as the version your brain creates while you're waiting. If I had to describe this video in one sentence, it'd probably be, the thing you're waiting for is almost never as bad as the version your brain creates while you're waiting for the thing to happen. With that, guys, go forth and conquer. I'll see you in the next one.